focus back on playing matches. We know that it's kind of like a second phase for us, having come through the Champions League games. We now know we're going to go into Scottish Cup semi-final and then another Champions League game, so it's a really important, crucial phase, and it's the phase that the players really enjoy the most in the season. It's the hardest, but it's the best.
What are you expecting from Rangers?
I expect them to up their game again. They've been doing that. I expect a tough game. I expect them to continue to do what they've been doing, which is, play good football, play out from the back, try and, develop their players and make them better. And that's, for me, what they've definitely done this season. And I think our players know that it's going to be a tough game, and we have to, play to our best, play to our strength, and we know that they've got, areas where they can hurt us if we don't do that.
You've been impressed by the investment and the commitment that Rangers seem to be putting into the women's team.
Yeah, it's impressive, no matter which club does it. For me, it's something that is a necessity in the women's game. That clubs start to invest in their the women's teams and making the investment in players, but also in infrastructure in terms of the training grounds and match day venues. And right now, Rangers is definitely right up there.
And what do you make of coach and what he's doing with the side at the moment?
He's doing really well. I think I've been impressed with the development of those players since he's come in, and the style that they're trying to play. And for me, it's nice to come up against teams who play in a certain way that makes you have to up your game in different areas and to watch out for styles. And I think that with Rangers and Gregory, he's done a good job.
And how important is getting silverware in this particular tournament? Because you're having a terrific season and you're doing brilliantly in the Champions League too.
It's massive. It really is for us. It's huge. We've put ourselves under a lot of pressure, and I think in football that's a good thing to make sure that it keeps you hungry to win. And the fact that we haven't won this trophy for a few years now, and we're in the semi-finals, despite the fact that it's been a busy period and a busy campaign so far. Obviously a good one. We want to make it better, and I think the one way to make your campaign better is to win the trophy this year.
You mentioned the investment there. Considering all the buzz about the women's game at the moment, is this the ideal time or the priority time where clubs should be investing now so that they continue with that buzz of the World Cup and how well you guys are doing, especially in Europe?
I think it's obviously a good time because of the women's games, been watched more than ever. But I don't think we should put it all down to the World Cup and trying to work off the back of one tournament. I think it's important that the women's game is seen as a long-term game in Scotland, not a short-term game. It's a long-term, and it should be invested in a lot more. It's a great product. There's so many players in this country that play here that work so hard to put football on the map, put themselves on the map, and I think over the time that I've been involved in the women's game, it's definitely improved. But a lot of that improvement has been despite the fact that there's not been a lot of investment, and I think it's definitely time that we took that seriously. Yeah.
In terms of your fixtures, the Champions League is just around the corner as well. How difficult is it to balance all the crucial games that are coming up over a close period of time, especially with so many players out there and going to international duty as well? Yeah,
it's tough. It's something that's kind of always been the case with Glasgow City. We have to juggle. It's just the way it is. Champions League, national teams, not just the A squad, but under 19s, under 17s, players away, and then most of them work as well, and you're having to constantly take care of them to allow them to be able to go and perform to the best of their ability, and sometimes that means juggling them game-wise, time-wise, training-wise, but it's as I say, it's something that is I suppose a good learning curve for a coach, but also for your players, and it makes them kind of grow up football-wise very, very quickly, because they have a lot of things to juggle. But I'm lucky because most of the players at Glasgow City are experienced and know exactly what they're doing.
Champions League, I think Scotland lose out in a place as of next season. How crucial is it for Glasgow City carrying the baton next season that we get that second place back and get as many of Scotland's clubs playing in Europe as quickly as possible?
Yeah, I think it's really important, because again, it is where we're trying to promote and to grow the women's game in Scotland, and the more clubs that are involved in the Champions League gives it a greater buzz, and I think it's been good to see this season Hibs in the Champions League, getting through the group stage, which is never easy, but they've done well to get through that. But obviously they've gone out now against a very good side. But it's nice just to have clubs in Europe, and for us now it's about focusing on making sure that we get to the next stage, which will be tough, but yeah, it all helps in terms of the women's game in Scotland. I think it's quite obvious that there's still a massive difference in perception, and from my perspective, I know that there are areas within the women's game and with the development of the women's game that it needs to change in order to allow it to become what it could be, and it's I think you have to ask the players, because the players are the ones that put all the effort in, and then go and perform as they've been doing for the national team at European Championships, World Cups, and it comes a bit of a joke at times, but the men can't do that. I think it should be taken seriously that the women are getting to these tournaments, and I think they deserve all the recognition and backing they can get. It's not happening really.
What are your thoughts, your plan?
In terms of the club schedule?
Yeah, and in terms of the equal level of importance put on events like this?
Yeah, I think it's difficult. Yeah, I think it's difficult. I think the amount of games over the course of the season, whether it's the men's games and the women's games combined, it's always going to be hard to have equal share of publicity, and I think there can always be more. I think in terms of the women's game, do I think that the viewing figures would be affected greatly on Sunday, the fact that it clashes with a men's Scotland game? Probably not. I think the fans that support Glasgow City, Rangers, Hibs, Motherwell will be there anyway, so for us it's not a huge impact, but I think moving forward, that obviously the less that these games can clash in terms of cup finals and whatever, I think that's obviously better to make it accessible and realistic for people to be able to attend both, rather than always it being a choice.
Yeah, so mentally, as a player, as someone who puts your neck on the line every single time you go on the pitch effectively,
yeah,
it doesn't bother you?
No, because I think the people that want to be there will be there. The people that value our game, will make that choice and they'll support us. So no, it doesn't have it would be great to have huge crowds every weekend. I hope one day that we get to that place, but certainly in the meantime, the way the game's growing, and people are catching on to the fact that women's football's a real thing that's actually worth watching and investing in, we'll continue to bide our time and do what we do, and if people come and watch, then great.
Yeah, Leanne, you work in the media now. During the World Cup, the media in Scotland were all over the women's team. Literally all over the place. But as soon as the World Cup ended, it stopped. It's almost back to where it was. It is back to where it was last season. How can the game itself generate more media publicity?
That's a good question. It's difficult though. I think you see that with any sport. I don't think it's just women's football. You look at like a Commonwealth Games, for example. Every sport gets huge amounts of publicity. Everybody's interested. Kids are out playing for the 2 weeks that it's on TV. And once the tournament finishes, then everybody goes back to doing what they do. So resources is probably a huge part of it, and continuing to develop a brand that's entertaining and that draws attention to it. what Rangers are doing and what Hearts are doing, Motherwell, Hibs, all the clubs that are investing in the future is only going to be good for the game, and you would hope that that investment draws increased attention and consistent levels of attention, that it doesn't just happen around major events, but generally across world sport. That is what happens. At huge events you get huge amounts of publicity, and then when the tournaments finish, people forget the people, as we just said, put their necks on the lines day to day, and they no longer want to speak to them as a sports person. That's just the reality of it a lot of the time. I don't have a chip on my shoulder about where the women's game's at just now. I think that we're taking the right amount of steps, we're moving positively in the right direction. Like, there's nothing alarming about what's going on in the women's game. It's all good, and I think that's just what we need to keep reminding people, is that it's actually worth investing your time in and coming to, you know, media events, games at weekends, speaking to international players that you have access to on a weekly basis. So the question doesn't lie with the people in the women's game, the questions lie with the people that are not attending the women's game, in my opinion.
Do you think there needs to be more done from the top then? I mean, we know that there's going to be a restructuring of the league, but what about the women's game as a whole? Do you think that there needs to be a concerted look at this, you know, a bit of an overhaul?
To an extent, I think we can always keep developing with the players that we have. If players get better, then the infrastructure around those players has to keep developing with the teams. Listen, I don't know too much about what the future is going to hold in terms of changes and what's going on. What I do know is that what goes on at Glasgow City is worthwhile being there, and it's a joy to be there. And I hope that other clubs are creating that same environment, and with that the national team will continue to prosper, and the people that are in charge of making those decisions in Scottish football recognise that it's something that they need to keep pushing and making better.
With teams like Rangers making more investment in their women's teams, players getting paid a bit for it, are you concerned that Glasgow City, you're unable to have that because obviously you don't have a men's team to affiliate yourselves with? Are you concerned that you might fall back, or do you welcome the competition?
No, I've always said that for the last couple of years. I've been asked the same question. The more teams that bring a challenge to us will only make us better. It's like being in a team where you sign good players. It makes training sessions better. To have that week in, week out, makes you more determined. I wouldn't say at Glasgow City we're in a comfort zone because we don't dominate all three competitions right now, so for us we're still trying to make ourselves better, but I think for the game to improve and to have fans coming to watch and there being more competitive matches and more close encounters, I think that's got to be better. And as I speak about the investment at grassroots level, there's no point in having that investment at grassroots level if you don't have jobs at the end point for these players. I certainly wouldn't go and study a degree that I don't have a job at the end of it. So if you're asking people to invest in sport and football and become better, you have to pay them at the end of it. So the fact that Rangers are doing that and offering these players contracts, and that Celtic, hopefully will be doing the same. Glasgow City, we know, have professional players at the club already, and I think everybody can keep making those positive steps moving forward. And certainly for me as a player, that's what we need.